So we were talking about how linear relationships, you can talk about a proportional change when you talk about pressure on something. They provide you some more examples. A change in the number of refrigerators produced by a manufacturer normally produces a proportional change in the revenue received. Well, that makes sense. If you produce more, hopefully you sell more, and therefore you have more revenue brought in. Recently, a major automobile manufacturer advertised that its cars behave in a linear way. The claim then was that an increase in force on the brakes or steering wheel produces a proportional response from the car, which would therefore be very predictable. So you could probably determine that the force applied on the brakes is going to have a linear relationship with the stopping distance, for an example. Linear processes are the easiest of all processes to describe mathematically. This is because they are represented by linear functions. A number of such processes were discussed in this section. You've already looked at linear expressions, y equals mx plus b, y minus y sub 1 is equal to m times quantity x minus x sub 1. You've talked about the standard format, ax plus bx, ax plus by equals c. You've looked at all of those formats. You've calculated slope. We've talked about the slope of perpendicular lines, slope of parallel lines, and coming up with the equations. Business applications, then. Many readers of this book will take a job in sales, right? That's what all of you are going to do. That's why you're taking this class. Our first formal example should seem relevant to you. So working on commission. If you look on page 22, Alice Drinkwater, that's all right, later on we'll run across an Alfonso Hornblower. So Alice Drinkwater has accepted a position at Compudyne selling personal computers. Her salary will be $1,500 per month plus a commission of 3% of her sales. Express her total salary in terms of X, her total salary T of X in terms of X, her monthly sales in dollars. Then calculate her salary based on sales of $25,000 per month. What information or how can I come up with an equation to figure out what my salary is going to be? Yeah, we want T of X, and we have that $1,500. You get that regardless. You're going to get $1,500 regardless. So even if I didn't sell anything, I get $1,500. If you think of it graphically, what is that piece of information? The y-intercept. Because even if I don't sell anything, I get $1,500 right here. That's a y-intercept. And if you think about the equation y equals mx plus b, what value is that? B. So I know that I am going to get $1,500 regardless of anything. And then it says that she gets 3% of her sales. 3% of her sales, and her sales is represented as X, her monthly sales. So how much she sells a month is X, and she gets 3% of that. How do you represent 3%? 0.03, it's 300ths. What they asked me to do was to express her total salary, T of X, in terms of X. Have I done that? Yes. And I don't care if you put the 1,500 plus 300ths X. I don't care which way you write that. I just tried to write it in the form of y equals mx plus b. Here's your slope right there. So we have the equation, but they asked me to do something else. Then calculate her salary based on $25,000 per month of sales. So what they want is T of $25,000 in sales. So you're going to take 3% of 25,000 and add 1,500. What would her salary be? she will have made $2,250. Who might get paid like this? Car dealer. Possibly the Buckle. Possibly the Buckle. Or Trade Home Shoes. Why would you say Trade Home Shoes or the Buckle? Because when you walk in right away, somebody's right there going, and then once they get you in a dressing room, then what happens? You wanted jeans, but all of a sudden you get these shirts.
It's like, I don't have enough money to afford this.
I don't want anything. Okay, one side.
Does that ever work?
They get paid off of a commission. The Internal Revenue Service, do you think that will ever affect you? The IRS? Better believe it will. Allows several methods for figuring depreciation of equipment. One being straight line depreciation. What does depreciation mean? Or what depreciation? The worth of whatever you bought decreases over time. And then all of a sudden it becomes an antique, and what happens to it? If it's in good shape, increases in value and might be worth a lot. Could. You see it when you talk, if you're in the farming, you will have a lot of depreciation involved. You put stuff on your property tax and it's depreciated out. Instead of paying the taxes right away on some of your farm equipment, you can put it on your personal property tax and then, or your personal property. And then it depreciates out. But then the bank also comes out and looks to make sure that you still have those items you say, or they come out and assess your farm, they look around, see what all you have. You say you have X number of cows, they're going to come out and look. I don't think they sit there and particularly count to see that, oh, you said you have 75 and I see 73. I don't think they do that. But I don't think just your own personal household stuff, I don't think you will see it there. If you, what happens when people do come into the homes and look is if you have to have an appraisal for something. Not so much for tax purposes, but there is a possibility you have an appraisal of something, you want to sell something along those lines. Maybe it's for, I don't know, if you want to refinance your house, they have to come in and do an appraisal, and they will come in, and then they're usually looking at just the house. It's just that you're not going to move everything out, so they can look at the house and then move everything back in. But it's to help determine the value of your home if you were going to do that. And they'll do that if you refinance, because they want to make sure that if they have to sell the house because you're not making your payments, that they can still get the money out of it. They don't want to sit there and find out that they gave you $75,000 for a house and it's only worth $40,000. Then they're out $35,000 if they have to sell it, if that's all they can get out of it. But you do it. My dad goes around and does them for farm equipment, stuff like that. Sometimes in order to get your loans for farming, you may need that done. You have to have that done. Because they want to make sure that if it's a bad year farming, whatever, you have multiple years that are bad and you can't pay off the loans that you had, that they could sell your stuff and get their money back. It's just the way it works. And there's lots of things with, like if you have care homes are very expensive. And I know some people that have had to sell land because it's in their name and it's something of value that they have and they can't pay the care home. So they sell it. It's like repossessing a car, basically. They'll sell it for you, and if it goes over what you have left to owe, then they might give you what's left over after they take out what you owe them. So we look at this next example, dealing with straight line depreciation. A milling company bought a machine costing $120,000, expecting it to depreciate at a constant yearly rate and to have a junk value of $3,000 after 5 years. What is its value at the end of X years, where your years are between 0 and 5 inclusively, meaning that they want to include 0 and 5 years? And then what is it at the end of 3.5 years? So when they say what is the value at the end of X years, where X is between 0 and 5 inclusively, they're looking for an equation. They want to know an equation. But if I look at this example, depreciation, sometimes it helps if you just make a rough sketch of it. You look at this and they tell you two things. You bought a machine that cost $120,000. What's going on your x-axis? What's going on your y-axis? Years on the x-axis. The price of it, what is the value of it, is going to go on the y-axis. So at 0 years, right when you purchase it, how much does it cost? Is it 120? Yeah, just $120,000. Then what happens? Expecting it to lose value at a constant yearly rate, to have a junk value of $3,000 after 5 years. So over here after 5 years, how much is it worth? Only $3,000. That's not the value I want there. I can look at that as a coordinate point. After 5 years, I can only get $3,000 out of it. Cars depreciate. Why do you think when you hit a deer, they say, oh, we totaled your car, and somebody else's car did not get totaled? It's not that the damage is any worse. It's just that the value of the car is not very good. If the value of the car is really low and the expense to fix it exceeds the value of the car, do you think they want to pay you more? No. They total it and they give you the value of the car because that would be cheaper for them. It won't cost them as much. So if you have $3,000 worth of damage on your car and your car's only worth $2,500, they're going to say, oh, it's totaled. Here's your $2,500. Go find a new vehicle. That's what it means when they total out your vehicle because of a deer accident. It's just not worth anything. Still in perfectly fine working condition for you, right? Now all of a sudden you got $2,500. Imagine the car you were driving that they say is $2,500 and going out and finding one for $2,500 out on the lot. Is there going to be a difference? And people are like, they totaled your car. What are you worried about? That doesn't mean that you just get a brand new car. You get the value of what they say your car was. So anyway, we have this. It says that it has a linear depreciation. It's going to decrease in value at that constant rate. Pieces of information you know. If I want to come up with an equation for that line, what would the equation for that line be? What do we want to put it in? They don't say. Value. Okay, the value of my milling machine, is that what it was? The value of a machine. X is going to represent my number of years. B is the value after X number of years. What information am I going to put down?
What's the yearly rate?
The yearly rate that it depreciates at. How can I find that? Find the slope. So remember, the slope is the change in y over the change in x. I have this point up here. I have this coordinate point after 0 years when I initially, did you put something in here? Okay. After 0 years, it's going to be 1,200. He's got me all messed up. It's going to be $120,000. How do I find that change in Y over the change in X? 120. Oh man, see, he's got me all worried. Principal walks in and 120,000 minus 3,000 over 0 minus 5. Now, should it be a negative value? Why? It's a negative slope, and it's decreasing in value over time. So it should be dropping. If it increased in value, it would be a positive slope. All right, so if I subtract that, what are we going to get? Okay, so divide that. And we get negative $23,400, I hope. What does that mean? After 1 year, it's $23,400 less in value than when I bought it. So after 1 year and I wanted to sell it, how much could I sell it for? $96,600. And I paid $120,000 for it. Every year, it decreases in value of $23,400. I'm not done with my equation. What do I need? The y-intercept plus 120,000. And that is for x between 0 and 5 inclusively, means it includes those values because of the equal sign, where x is number of years that I have owned the machine, right? Why do I need to know that piece of information? I'm a business owner. Is it important that I know what the value of the machine is? Yeah. Just as important as total insurance companies knowing the value of your car so they don't pay more than what it's worth. Yeah. You get to a certain point in a company, if you have a company, is there going to be a certain point where if you have to fix something, it's better off just to buy a new one? Possibly. Through some of that, you can get to a parabola type graph, and you can look at the peak of that. So it's going to be a quadratic function with a negative x squared value. Negative because it's going to curve down. And it's going to tell you, you're making money. You're constantly making money. So if I were to have a graph that looks like this, I'm still making money. All the way across here, I am making money. But why would it go down after a point in time? Because maybe right here, I'm starting to put money into the machine. And you have to take some of that income that you had up here, and now you got to start paying for things for repairs and stuff like that. Which means you're still making money, but are you making as much money? No. Why do I just not jump straight up here? Well, okay, there may be training and learning the equipment, but do you think, look at that milling machine, for an example, $120,000. Who's got $120,000 laying around for that? No, you're paying it off. You're paying it off, and all of a sudden you got to pay it off. And by the time, welcome to the real world, by the time you get it paid off, then what has to happen? Repairs. Don't think that's any different with a house. Do you have any idea how much it's going to cost you for a house? What makes a difference? What makes a difference on how much your house is going to be worth? Area, location, square footage, the lot, how much acreage or like. Does it come furnished with appliances and all that stuff? the neighborhood, which is location, but of course out in the country would be different than in town. Out in the country, there's probably going to be some acreage, which would make it worth more than in town. Sometimes out in the country will be cheaper just for per square footage because of the location versus in town. It would be more expensive if you're next to a school, maybe, because that's going to be, you know, people are going to want that. The kids can just walk to school. Age of the house is going to make a difference. When you buy it, it's going to be because there's going to be an evaluation of the house anyway. There's going to be an appraisal saying this is how much the house is valued. Some of that goes up, it's not any different than land. Some of that goes off of what recent houses in the area have sold for, if there's been any that have sold recently. Our taxes went up, for an example, because a house just down the street a block went in. It's got that exercise swim pool outside. I mean, it's seems like a 5-car, I don't know what all, but it's a nice house. So now they think all the houses around are like that. So we all have expensive houses because one went in that's expensive. So no, it doesn't make a difference on that, for sure. I mean, how much somebody else has left to pay on it. It might be on what they ask, and that's just up to you if you're going to pay what they ask. But it's a bargaining thing. Not unless you really absolutely need it right away. You're going to go in lower and hope they drop, and they hope that you come up a little bit. But sometimes the bank's going to say, we did an appraisal. This is all it's worth. This is all the money we're giving you.
Like if you are paying for your house and then you decide on like
what happens then is you sell your house. If you have to move, and you have not sold your house yet, you move and then you're either paying rent somewhere else plus the house payment on the house you have, or you're making 2 house payments. As soon as you sell it, what you're going to do is you're going to take that money, say you had $80,000 left to pay on the house. You sold it for $100,000 because the value of it is 100, you know, whatever. You have $20,000 is the difference between what you sold it for and what you owe on it. You would take that $80,000 and you'd write that check to the lending institution that you had, and you would pay off that house. And then the additional money that you have, you can put towards your new house or pocket it for whatever you want to do with it. But then that additional money becomes yours. So then you get into the problem of, do you rent or do you buy? What's the benefits of renting? If something breaks, it's not your problem. Oh, darn, the refrigerator quit working. Okay, call the landlord and it's their problem. So problems become theirs. You don't have to pay property taxes. If you move, oh, don't worry, you're still paying property taxes because it's going to show up in your rent. Because don't think that a landlord's going to sit there and have you pay a certain amount of rent and then have additional expenses themselves. Some places, your rent includes your utilities. Sometimes it does not. You'll still have to pay those yourself if they're not included in that. You can leave whenever. What's the benefits of owning a house? It's yours, and when, okay, I might not be able to move. You can do whatever you want. You can paint it whatever color you want. They won't care. You can have pets if you want. If you're pumping all this money into something, you're making all these payments, and if you're renting, you're just gone and that money's gone. Right now, you're making your house payments, and then if you move and you sell it, you get money back. You're actually owning it instead of just borrowing it. Would you rather just borrow a car and pay so much every mile and every month to drive a car, or would you rather own the car? Well, no. They have nice cars, but what you got to be careful with on that leasing, of course you have nice cars. I'm not going to lease to drive a junker. I want it to be reliable. But you better be careful, because if you go over miles, it's going to be just as bad as if you go over on data on your cell phones. A certain number of miles and X number of years. And if you, so like if I want to lease it for 3 years, they say this is how many miles you can put on it. And that's it. And if you put more on it, you get, because what happens when you're done leasing it, what happens? They get it back, or you get the option to buy it. They get it back. Well, what has it done in those 3 years? It has depreciated. And if it has depreciated, they're not going to say, all right, what happens to more miles you put on it? What happens to the value of it? It depreciates even more. It depreciates at a faster rate. If I put miles on it at a fast rate, it's going to depreciate like that. And it's not going to have it's not going to take very long until the value of it is junk. So they want to protect themselves of that, and that's why you're going to be paying extra if you're going to be putting more miles on there. I need to save this, or else I'm not going to be able to save it. Unless you really don't want to listen to that again. That's fine.